Hey, this is how to point without pointing, how to use very poor and limited data, and how to get over the loss of a loved one from clarity of mind. I've been asked a question recently, and the question was just passed on to me. So I'm not directly in front of the person who asked the question, and so the parameters for the question are incomplete. So I've got to rely on how the question was posed. And it was posed this way. I was asked to verbatim discuss how to get over a lost loved one using clarity of mind, such as the loss of a parent, a sibling, sons, daughters, best friend, etc. Okay. First off, there's an inherent problem that I can glean from the line of questioning, which is how to get over using clarity of mind. As if clarity of mind were a tool, like an NLP swish pattern, a stone, a bludgeon, a hammer, a baseball bat, a screwdriver, something to hit things with. And clarity of mind isn't a tool. Yeah, I get that you can do things with clarity of mind that you can't do without clarity of mind. The same way you can do a lot more things from a state of flow that you can't do when you're out of flow. But clarity of mind to me isn't a tool that you could just technique onto a problem. Clarity of mind in reverse is the state that enables techniques. Meaning, if you come from a clear mind, so many more things are possible. It's an upstream, downstream issue. When you come from a clear head, beliefs are different and can be rewritten. If you hear wisdom, if you feel and hear and heed insight, this is an experience that changes and, in fact, to me, rewrites beliefs. And when your beliefs change, your skills, your capability set, and your actions change automatically. So, to me, asking a question like, how do you use clarity of mind? How do you use a clear head? How do you use a state of flow to get over the loss of a loved one? And I wasn't sure how to answer that, because it isn't a tool that you how to on top of something. It's a state, and more than a state that you come from that allows other things to unfold or happen. A way I like to explain this that I've heard from my coaches is, imagine you're at the beach or at seafront or ocean front, and there are boats. And the boats are lined up on shore at low tide. When the tide comes in, when the tide rises, all the boats don't need to be pushed out onto sea. When the tide rises, all the boats rise. And that to me is like levels of consciousness. When your levels of consciousness rise, a lot of things lift, a lot of misconceptions, a lot of misunderstandings lift. A lot of tension lifts, a lot of discomfort lifts. We're less in our way. And when you come from a clear head, or do your best to return to a clear head when you're grieving or when you've lost someone, the experience of that moment is different. I've heard it said this way. One way was, I understand. And it's as simple as that. And the feeling, while there was grief, was of like a genuine tenderness, love, and compassion was there, rather than just the, how dare you leave? Why did you leave? You can't do this. Another way I've heard it expressed was, someone had lost her husband very suddenly, and despite the loss, there was a moment when she gazed out and saw the new snow outside, that had fallen. And for a moment, she was just taken aback by the beauty of it all. And the way she experienced it, it came with kind of like a voice that said, here's a gift that will keep unraveling throughout your entire life. Now, she doesn't know where that voice came from. She just remembers that the experience was calming and enriching and full, and she was full of stillness and love and gratitude. And despite everything still going on, the moment was there and she couldn't explain it. And the way she understands now is that, well, this was a moment of wisdom or insight or of clarity of mind, creating a break in the clouds. And while things on the outside are the same, the experience is completely different. Nothing outside will have had been different at all, but everything would have had changed. Everything had changed. Another way I've heard it is that, well, one of my coaches, when his father died, expressed that in that moment, he had never ever felt that connected to his father and all of his family than in that moment. There was a deepness, a kindness, a lovingness, a gratitude, and an unspoken understanding. And it felt to me, from the way the story was conveyed, that there was, in that moment, like a deep compassion and peace unfolded and embraced both my coach and his family. And as he said, he had never felt that connected to his dad and to everyone. Never before that moment had he felt that connected. And he was a man who was fairly connected to his dad. Now, he also said, because he's done all this, NLP, hypnosis, and the way he put it, had he been offered by colleagues, hey, I can use a swish pattern to get rid of how you're feeling and you won't grieve anymore. He said, I would have hit that man in the face, knocked him over. Because how dare he? He couldn't possibly understand what he would be taking away if he were to just attempt to technique me into forgetting or to amnesia me into not remembering the moment. There was just too much of a richness, of a deep feeling in the moment that would have had been lost if he resorted to techniques. And so that's how I think of how to use clarity of mind to get over a loss. I don't think we're supposed to skip grieving. I do, however, understand that when the tide rises, when the tide of consciousness rises, all the boats rise. And a richness in the moment arises that could not otherwise have been there if that clarity had not set in. When we're not in clarity, when our heads aren't clear, when we don't have a fairly peaceful, fairly good experience of life, things are messy. Things are messier than they actually are. Things are more painful than they actually are. Things are unnecessarily, in many ways, that they don't have to be. So I'm not saying that you should skip grieving. I'm not sure that's a thing that we should do. I am, however, suggesting that the process of grieving would not only be tempered or reshaped, but it will be completely different when we come from a clear mind. I did a workshop in Davao once, and one of the participants overnight before our day 2 had a condition that required surgery. And when I saw all these managers and area leaders the next day, they were all flustered and distraught, and they weren't exactly there. So I asked what had happened, and they said something happened, and they were really concerned. They were really worried, was the word that virtually everyone used in one dialect or another. And I asked them if they've done everything they could, and they said, yeah. And I asked them, is there anything else they could do? And they said, no. Then I asked them, does your worry help? And they were confused about the question. And I asked, is it possible that there's a difference between caring and worrying? And they were confused over this question. So I went further. You do care for this person, I asked. And they said, yes, they cared very deeply, and that's why they're worried. I said, no. I get that you're worried. But if you're worrying, that keeps your head from having clarity. That keeps you from a clear head. And when your head's not clear, you make more mistakes and you aren't available. And there are so many things that you can't do for your friend if you're too overwhelmed by emotions in the moment. I asked them, do you want to be able to respond quickly because you care about your friend? And they said yes. And I said, do you think it might be harder to respond really quickly, really well, really appropriately, really usefully if they were overwhelmed by so many overwhelming feelings? And they said, yeah. I said, that's what it's like when our head's not clear. We're prone to accidents and unable to help those who need us most, and we're walled off from what we can do. But if we come back to the fact that we care for people, and the best way to care for them is to come from a clear head, we're capable of so much more. And so this is how I think about going back to clarity and coming from clarity when going through the grieving process. And I hope this helps. Clarity isn't a technique. Clear head isn't a technique. It's more than a state. It's a beingness. It's somewhere you come from. When you're back in the moment, in the present, in the now, when you're coming from deep calm, stillness, wisdom, there's so much more of you that's available for taking care of yourself and those you have to take care of. And I would suggest humbly that if you wanted to do anything at all, make space, create space, do whatever it takes to come back to a clear mind. And when you're able to do that, to do what will happen naturally anyway when we're not in our own way, even the process of grieving and, you might say, getting over a loss, that's kinder, that's gentler, that's more compassionate, understanding. There will be, in that moment, so much more in terms of information and assurance and capability and useful action than we ever could have, given those circumstances were our minds not clear. I hope this has been useful. We'll pick this up again and let me know how this has helped, if it has helped. And if there's anything else you'd like to clarify, please let me know.